this question first came in from someone using the skills program online, and their question was really, how many activities should I be working on with my child? When should I work on them? How often should I work on them? And I realized this is not something that's just intuitive to people.
Yeah.
It's a really good question, and it actually has to do a lot with how many hours a week of intervention are you going to be doing with the child. If you have a child who is going to be getting like 15 hours a week, you're probably looking at working on less than 10 activities with that child, because each of the activities needs to be worked on during every teaching session,
okay,
as much as possible. You don't want to be sitting down and working on an activity once a week, for example.
Yeah.
It's just not going to be learned fast enough. You're not going to get generalization. So normally speaking, you would want to try to work as many hours a week as you can with your child. The research shows you want to do at least 30 hours a week if you can. Now, that's not always possible. But if you are able to do around 30, then you're looking at more like 15 to 20 activities.
Okay.
And we usually put these activities in a binder, and we call it the log book. And this is kind of like our thing that we carry around, and we make sure we're working on all these activities. And let's say I am doing 30 hours a week with the child. What I would typically do is maybe like 2-hour teaching sessions with breaks in between. And during those sessions, I have my 15 to 20 activities that are all in this book, and I try to do as many of them as I can. And then, like I said, there would be a break or something, and then another 2-hour teaching session would start, and the whole thing would start over. So now we're going to try to do those 15 to 20 activities again. And if I'm able to, let's say, do 6 hours of this per day, 5 days a week, I'm actually working on those 15 to 20 activities 3 times a day.
Yeah.
5 days a week.
Which, when we talk about what we know works, and everybody always says in the show, having opportunity, frequent opportunity and feedback for those opportunities is key, then upping the number of times that you work on it is going to make you more likely to be successful.
Exactly.
Okay.
And, you know, some parents are doing the therapy themselves, so they don't necessarily have a bunch of different therapists or whatever, but let's say you did have a therapy team, then it would be different people also working with the child. So it wouldn't be the same person doing it 3 times a day, but it would be, let's say, 3 different people, which is good too for the child for generalization, because you don't want them to only be able to do an activity when they're in the presence of one person.
Yeah.
And then suddenly now you say, oh yeah, the child can do this, but as soon as they're in a new situation with a new person, it falls apart and they can't do it.
And I think it's super important when people look at this. You got to be realistic, but you got to set your priorities too. So if you say to yourself, okay, realistically, I've got 15 hours. Okay. You know, you've looked at how much time, you know that it's beneficial to do as much as you can, but what you have is 15 hours.
Right.
And you've heard Dr. Najdowski and other experts say, you know, if you, especially with a younger child, you want to try to get in the 30 window, which might mean you ask yourself, okay, is it possible I could bring somebody else who can do 15 hours in?
Right.
Or do I just have 15 hours and it's me going it alone? You got to really be realistic about that. Then once you've said how many hours, you need to set your priorities for what are the things that I most need to get on board. And I hear from a lot of parents that they go, okay, but I don't know that I'm setting the best priorities.
Right. That's another good thing, question regarding all this is sometimes parents say, well, I don't know if I should, like you say I should do, you know, 15 to 20 activities if I'm working with my child for 30 hours, but how do I even choose those activities? Like, are they mostly language activities, or am I also using, you know, doing adaptive and motor skills and play and all these other? And there's 8 areas you can pick from in the skills program. There's an assessment you do, and it tells you what all the gaps are, and it gives you a nice graph that basically shows you the areas in which your child has strengths and weaknesses. And so I would say do that assessment and figure that out, and then where you try to see where the greatest weaknesses lie and put a little bit more activities from those areas than the others.
Yeah.
Because this whole point of this is getting the child caught up, right?
Right. Right.
So,
absolutely.
and then try to maybe do a balanced program if you can. But if you're only doing 15 hours a week, you probably don't have time to do a balanced program. You can't necessarily be working on something from all 8 areas, so you might need to be more focused on choosing a few things.
And it's also going to depend on the age of your child, because we can't overwork a child. If a child's going to school and they've got that amount of time being spent at school, it's really hard to squeeze in another 30 hours. It's not impossible, but it's really hard, depending on the child and the family, to squeeze in another 30 to 40 hours on
true.
top of school.
Yeah.
So then you have to weigh what's happening there in addition.
Right, but if you're a parent and you're the one implementing this, you're with your child every minute that they're not in school. And so I view every minute as a learning opportunity. So maybe you can carefully select the lessons you're planning on working on and just do them in life. So for example, if when they're not in school, you spend only maybe 2 or 3 hours a day doing actual direct one-on-one teaching, maybe you focus then on, language skills and some of these other things that you need to be sitting down in like a teaching scenario. But then you also decide, okay, I'm going to work on this couple adaptive skills and I'm going to work on these social skills, but I'm going to do it more in the natural environment when the opportunities arise.
Right.
Okay, so now it's actually bedtime and it's time for them to put on their pajamas and they don't know how to zip something or fasten something. So I'm going to just make sure that every night when we're doing pajamas that I use pajamas with those kinds of fasteners or something so that we're practicing. But it doesn't have to feel so contrived like I'm doing a teaching session right now.
You don't have to go sit at a table and show cards and stuff. It's just taking the opportunity in that moment to use what's happening. And of course, we have the opportunity to do that endlessly.
Yeah.
There's stuff, it's mind-boggling when you think of all the opportunities. And you know what's especially interesting to me as a parent and as a former teacher is that when we're going to be spending more time today talking about what's the most frustrating time of the day, often those are the prime opportunities. If you're having your child when you pick them up at school and that's when they're engaging in challenging behavior, it's because if there was a teaching moment that happened there, it would fix it.
Yeah.
Or if your child is freaking out in the aisle of the grocery store, if there was a teaching moment that would happen beforehand, you may not get that behavior.
Right.
If we took advantage of the opportunities, it helps to fix a lot of stuff. Really important that we be mindful in those moments. Like you were saying to me, if I would use when I'm tired, use that moment at bedtime.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and if somebody needs more specific help, what's available to them? If somebody says, you know what, that's great, and I hear what you're saying, but I just don't know how to organize that for myself. I really need somebody else. I've taken the assessment. I need somebody else to look at it and say, hey, here's how you might prioritize a day. Is that available to them?
Yes, yes. We have what we call skills consultants who can help with that kind of stuff, and they can interact with families over the internet using video conferencing or over the phone. And the nice thing about skills is that you can log in and you can see all of the different things that a child is working on, so they can actually look at the assessment and see where the weaknesses lie and look at the things you're picking and kind of walk through that with you. So that's available as well.